Hello and welcome to the promised Q&A. Sorry for the delay. Things kind of imploded for a while back there. There was a minor apocalypse to worry about. But I've got your questions, and I thought I'd get like maybe 8 or 9 questions, guys. There's 109 replies on this thread, so bear with me. I will try and answer as many as possible within reason. Now, I did invite petulant questions, so those are my own fault. So here we go. I'll just read through them in order. So Attila asks, David Tennant, Matt Smith, or Peter Capaldi? Obviously Peter Capaldi, 100%. That's a Doctor Who thing for those who aren't following along in the fandom line. Zupra asks, what does a man have to do to get a date with you? Spoilers. Boris, look, I'm sorry for the pronunciation of your usernames. Some of them are quite eccentric. If 100% of all stories and focus on media are suddenly related to COVID-19, where did all the usual stories disappear to? Do they now even exist? Is this the best evidence we live in a simulation? Possibly. It could be that we're all in an episode of Westworld or The Matrix. No, I'd like to know where the other stories are as well, because quite frankly, 24/7 apocalypse is just a little bit much. Now, there are other things that are going on. Also, it's depressing to be told how screwed your life is continuously. Just mix it up a little bit, if at all possible. Earth Symbol asks, I want to know if you still have that crop of dirty great spiders dropping off your trees. Yeah, can confirm I still have a driveway full of extremely large arachnids that on one occasion tried to kill me, but yes, I still have them. Sovereign Statesman asks, coronavirus and feminism questions are all well and good, but the most pertinent question is, are you single and ready to mingle outside of the 1.5 meter proximity limit, of course? No comment. DMAC asks, if our government referenced the UK and Singapore decisions to keep schools open as comfort, where do we stand now? Opinion wanted, I realise you are not the government. No idea where we stand. I think that our government and other world governments are making it up as they go along. Death has been, and pandemics and war, they've all been part of the human story, but I can't recall at any stage the answer being to completely shut down the entire economy of a country. So we'll see if that's a good solution or if that is a catastrophic solution to our current problem. So yeah, I have no idea is the answer to your question. Sorry, none. James Stobes asks, since everyone is only talking about toilet paper, does the Ellie State advocate for folding or scrunching? No comment. Footballers the Winner asks, how did the Gary Hargrave appearance go, by the way? This is not my petulant question. I'll think on that a bit more. Unfortunately, considering that the world ended in a coronavirus apocalypse, that has been put on hold. But I shall be back eventually. If the world survives, I'll be back. Foreign Agent asks, where/how did you learn to write so beautifully? Oh, thank you, Foreign Agent. Basically, I learnt to write in the fandom forums, which is a hostile environment where criticism is brutal. They call it flaming. And so you learn right away if your writing is actually any good, because no one is paid to tell you that it's great. They either love it or hate it, and they have no fear in telling you if it's truly shit. Graham Dreyer asks, when you go dancing barefoot in the rain, do you sing? Christ, no. No, oh gosh. I couldn't carry a tune to save my life. It's just better for the whole world if I don't sing ever. So no, I don't. Andrew Close asks, question, if infections greatly rise, will our health system prioritise younger people over older people, per Italy excluding 60 plus? Are we all not equal? Does paying a lifetime taxes account for so little? Definitive answer from the authorities should be forthcoming. That's a really good question. And I think that will depend upon the sorts of moral questions that our health ministers are pretending that they're not actually asking themselves. Personally, I think that we are all equal, so first in, best dressed, but that I doubt will be the case. I'm not quite sure what their position is currently, but usually you would give care to those who need it most, rather than those who are most likely to recover, because they will recover on their own. But that is a medical question. I don't know what our health departments have decided to do, and I'm not quite sure how well that is working out for Italy, because the last I saw, their stats weren't looking great. But good question. Bob Sword asks, question, did you always possess your current socio-political mindset, and what do you think influenced this? Or did you have a red pill moment and shifted outlook? What was the red pill instigator? No, I was born this way. I have always been this irritating. Discursive ME asks, I lived through the Whitlam months. What is the fascination with this man? Who knows? Who knows? The only political history that I got in school, and it was a pretty reasonable school, was 2 pages worth of woe is me Whitlam, and that was considered to be our Australian political history. So I've been playing catch up since then. So I don't know what the obsession is, apart from, a lifetime of hurt feelings from the left, because, he did get voted out again afterwards, so clearly it was the right choice. Terry, my live-in troll, hi Terry, asks, not original, but can Superman outrun the Flash? Terry, I'm a sci-fi girl. I don't do comic books. I don't know. I'm gonna wager Superman. Have a fight in the comments below if I'm wrong, which I possibly could be. Marion asks, hi Alexandra, what do you grow or produce on your farm? Can we buy from you online? Thanks. P.S. When will you introduce martial law for all those lefty troublemakers on Twitter? I'm just gonna laugh at the last part. We grow olives, and we have a vineyard out the front. And I've also got cows. Not milkable cows, as the internet would have you believe. We have Angus cows. But my brother makes limoncello and gin and currently hand sanitizer. So you can buy that online at mariahriverdistillery.com. There are links in my Twitter and previous posts, and I'll put another one up. But yes, you can buy alcohol from us. We are a boutique distillery, and you can also buy hand sanitizer from us if you are caught short at the moment. Good question. I also grow arachnids, if you listen to the internet. K.I. Not a Redhead asks, many jokes here about women not being able to top up the Botox. My question is, will we have to look at hairy men? Sorry, we need a bit of silliness. I hope not. I hope not. Viv asks, is it isolating living on a farm? Yes. Yes, it is. I was born in the city. I used to work in the center of the city. So it's definitely taking a bit of getting used to living on a farm. Damo asks, coffee, milk first or second? Second, but only because I'm lazy. I don't really mind. If we're talking about tea, then milk definitely second. I could talk about tea all day. I have a whole wall of it. My tea collection is out of control. It's a problem. It's an actual problem. What else have I got? Mick asks, is it true the Australian federal LNP government has allowed foreign interests, including China, to buy Australian hospitals? Well, Mick, I'm not sure about the hospitals. They certainly have allowed China to buy up our energy grids and our ports and our airports and our water, so it would not, and our farming land, definitely our farming land. So it would not surprise me if it was our hospitals too, but I will have to check. Interesting if it's true. Anthony asks, PM says worldwide indefinite travel ban. Tim Wilson says there is no ban. Isolate 14 days when we get there, Tim says. Flight Centre says travel ban is for 30 days outside travel dates. Leaving for Canada on May 10th. I presume that's Anthony's leaving for Canada on May 10th. Do you think we'll be going? Yikes. In May? You possibly? I'm not convinced that the governments of the world can leave the entire economy shut down for this long. So, leaving on May... Look, even if you did get to leave, I would say that a lot of the businesses and things that you're going to see will either be shut because there's still a government mandate for it, or they will have gone out of business. So, unfortunately, I think your holiday might be a little bit different to what you had expected or hoped. But best of luck, Anthony. Sarah Brunel asks, I'll try and think of a petulant question. Please do. I don't mind them. Ask me whatever you like. Blue Ren Dawn asks, Morris dancers, yes or no? Now, the only reason I know what this even is because I just finished watching one of James May's wine tour videos. So I can safely answer no. No. No Holds Barred, hello, asks, can we have a reenactment of the whole spider, snake, shirtless scenario? No, definitely no, because I will be trolled forever. But you can hear the story over at his podcasts at the Aussie Trucker. I shall reblog it so you have a link. Great question. C.H. Groper asks, what do you think about dancing Israelis and the USS Liberty? First I've heard of it. Aussie Bell, is it good advice to never eat anything bigger than your head? Now that is advice that I give myself regarding chocolate. I figure that if the chocolate is larger than my head, then I possibly shouldn't eat the whole thing. Because you can be poisoned by chocolate, but I don't know the exact quantities. I eat a fair whack of chocolate. But yeah, the head size it's a good rule. It's a good rule. Don't eat things larger than your head. And don't eat bats. I mean, I think if we've learned anything from this crisis, bats are off the menu if we want to remain a civilization. China, I mean, maybe just a hint. Graham asks, can you investigate pandemic bonds from the World Bank and its repercussions on our money market? Look at Euro money. I'll have a look. I've been looking into the green bond scenario, which would have had a similar effect on the economy had it been left to run. However, this major overreaction and destruction of our economy has sort of put the predicted global crises in the financial market in a sort of holding pattern. So no one really knows what's going to occur with some of these big deals and government debt. But that pandemic bonds is an interesting concept. I shall go and have a look. Thank you very much, Graham. Aussie Deplorable asks, how do we get CCP influence out of Australia? With great difficulty. That is how. It is going to take some perseverance, politicians with backbones, of which we are sadly lacking in Australian politics. We are going to have to negotiate with the unions and Fair Work in order to get a satisfactory wage to allow factories to reopen, because if we do not manufacture some of our content, then we are going to be in some serious trouble. So it's going to take the unions to come on board to save their own people, the working class of Australia. Give them jobs. Let them work. Let us produce things in this country, as opposed to buying everything cheap and shit from China. This is our own fault that we allowed so much of our economy to be driven by a communist nation with expansionist aspirations and an obsession with historical governments that the rest of the world tried to bury because they were a super bad idea. So yes, I think we can use this as an opportunity to rebuild ourselves more on our historic successes as the Industrial Revolution. Of course, learning from the problems that we had in that era, but taking the best parts of it and making ourselves successful. And we have to remember which countries are actually our friends and forge stronger trade ties with them. US, England, Canada, the European countries that managed to unwind themselves from Russia and China. We have to do this quickly. And if we manage to do it successfully, then we will bounce back. But we have to make some decisions now. And certainly we've got to do something about China's massive holdings of our land in this country. So, good question. Sorry for the micro rant. It is a hobby of mine. Hashtag cancel China. Tim and the Hidden People asks, how come you put bread in the toaster and toast comes out? Can you tell the difference between butter and I can't believe it's not butter? First question. Second question, I would never think to using pretend butter, so I couldn't possibly answer. Drizzle06 asks, does chocolate milk come from chocolate cows? Obviously. Thomas asks, should the Greens keep Adam Bandt as leader so that they dissolve into the ether? The only problem with Adam Bandt, despite being an endless source of amusement for all of us, is that you don't want someone like that getting within shouting distance of real power. It's the same argument you use for Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Yeah, she is showing up how completely insane factions of the Democrats are, but do you really want someone like that, reaching out and stroking power? Because I think that's a really bad idea. So yes, I think the Greens will keep him only because they've got no way of getting rid of him. And it will be an amusing ride, but please be careful that we always hold him to account as well as making fun of him, because that man may cause us problems later down the track, particularly if what I fear will happen is that the Liberals will lose the next election, because there is so much anger from so many people about the complete destruction of their world that I suspect we'll be looking at a Labour government. And if that's the case, you will have the Greens sitting next to them with their lovely little Marxist club, and we have to be very careful that doesn't turn into something altogether more sinister. Sabo asks, which Liberal Party branch has the best functions? Obviously it is Roseville. Everyone keep an eye on Roseville. They have freedom of speech functions, dinners with politicians. I encourage you all to attend. John Lucas asks, who are these organised gangs of people stripping supermarkets/shops of stock, and what are they doing with their hauls? Well, I think there are two major groups working. There are those who are local, who then try and flog their hauls on places like eBay for a huge markup, and then there are the professionals who are shipping their stuff back to China. Now that's supposed to be stopping, but we're still seeing quite a bit of it going on. So, and it's not just our country this is happening in, it's happening all around the world. Carnage House Productions asks, the people have been wondering if you'll come on Carnage House for an interview. You up for it? Yes, already done, been posting clips. Also, you refer to yourselves as the plural. Slightly alarming. It was fun, guys. Go and have a look. Check out Carnage House. Give them a like and subscribe. They're great. Evelyn Ray asks, what ended up happening with the Vic Roslin chick? I was tagged along with yourself and all of her doxing. and was curious if anything eventuated from it. For those who missed it, that she's an identical twin, this girl, and she was quite bizarre actually. She went through my Facebook and reposted some quite good photographs. I mean, I don't know what her problem was, and tried to dox me by contacting my old school from the dawn of time. I think she eventually got suspended for a while for being crazy, but she's back. She blocked me, so I've had lovely peace and quiet since then. But her and her sister are still running around and doing their usual baseless, vacuous, pointless trolling. So you can go and troll them if you like. Have fun. They're just not much purpose to them though. Not much substance. China and the globalist did it asks, former journalist Mark Kenny has been given a job at a university and now identifies as a professor. WTF is going on, and just how deep is this gravy train for leftists? Universities exist to make very average people richer than they could be in a free market. How deep does the gravy train go? Very. Very. If we learn something from what has transpired, it should be how the system has been protected and built by those in power for their financial benefit, either directly or indirectly. And they just go around it's a very small world. Politics, and journalism, and everyone knows it's happening. And particularly the universities are going to have to rethink their entire approach, because not only was their quality of education dropping dramatically by accepting in all of these fee-paying students from China who couldn't speak English, and were allowed to enter courses where other kids, especially Australian kids, had to meet higher standards to get into the course. They've worked out how volatile that market is and how it can be gone like that. And they should have been focusing on our kids. And they are Australian universities. They are funded by our taxpayer dollars to educate our kids. And it's all going to be a big wake-up call for many layers of our society. And none of this is new. Everyone's known this for a long time, and now all of them have been proved true. Rob asks, can we introduce a new law to jail people profiteering from this emergency? I'm pretty sure that is already happening. There are new laws about what you can and can't do with products in this environment that we're seeing now. Of course, too slow. I mean, after China bought most of our equipment and shipped it out to themselves, now they're trying to give us back crap that we don't want, it doesn't work. But they have at least started to introduce some temporary measures. Sean asks, why are you giving in to the China panic? Because China destroyed the whole world. Just saying. Sticky Tape asks, great name. What is something that everyone looks stupid doing? I'd have to say, you know those virtual reality headsets that were quite fun about 10 years ago? Everyone was wearing them and tried to do these virtual reality games. Everyone looks like a Muppet. It doesn't matter how cool you are, you look like a complete and utter Muppet. So, there you go. VR. Kara asks, why does the left feel disgusted when they see a conservative woman who isn't a feminist? That is because modern feminism tells the lie that in order to be successful or independent, you must also subscribe to feminism. And it really upsets them when conservative women prove that merit, not ideology, is the marker for success. And basically, people like myself and Daisy, we invalidate their entire narrative. That is why they hate us. Also, they're angry all the time at everything. It must be very exhausting being a feminist. Also, I'm not dyeing my hair pink or putting in nose rings or anything like that. So, just no to the feminist movement. Egalitarianism is much better than this toxic breed of we hate everything. So, sorry about that, feminists. Come and hate me in the comments if you want. It'll make absolutely no difference. So I've got a question here from David. What about toilet paper? You can read it yourselves. Neil Harris asks, okay, how about this? Why are the left reacting so much more hysterically than the rest of us? Look at them at the supermarkets. I'll let you guys think on that one yourselves. Oh no, my phone, don't die. This Twitter, by the way, completely off topic. The new Twitter app, after their little update for security, is just rubbish. It's rubbish. It's so rubbish. End rant. Okay, Lol asks, are you going to answer the questions? I'm interested in the one about coffee below. Yes, I'm answering all your questions. Why? Don Q asks, why do Greens hate Australia? Because they hate themselves. Jim asks, how are Conservatives going to get the message to young people, especially as the left grooms kids? They have advantage of youth prosperity for both rebellion and tendency to view justice as caring for the marginalised, but not see the big picture. If I had been asked this question a month ago, I would have said that the youth will go through the normal process of growing up, getting their first bill, having to work for their money, and they'll quickly realise that everything they were told in university about society and history is bull. Total crap. And they will quickly do what the majority of working adults do, and that is become more conservative. But right now, as someone very cleverly said on Twitter the other day, we are being given a free trial of communism, and it's terrible. No one likes it. They don't like having their freedoms curtailed. They don't like being told what they can and can't buy. They don't like being poor. And it turns out that not having a job is not, and being paid by the government to exist, is not all it's cracked up to be at all. It takes the spirit out of a nation. You know, it takes their soul if they can't work on their own ideas and have their own thoughts. Nobody wants to be a barcode. Not really. That's not part of Western ideology. It's not in us to just submit to whatever the government wants us to and take the money at the end of the day. And I think what we will find is a generation who are being forced to pick up the pieces for this disaster. And they will be like the last generation who had to do the same. Resilient, hardworking, and by and large, conservatives who don't like large governments. Johnny Delkin, hello Johnny, everyone should go follow Johnny, asks, how can you work from home if you are homeless? Now, I haven't written much about what I think of the homeless situation in Australia. Maybe I should, because I've got quite strong opinions on how badly we let down those who want to drag themselves out of poverty. And I think we could do a much better job with it. So thank you for the question, Johnny. We need to do lots more, especially for the kids who are homeless. We don't have enough motivation or votes in politics to make it a huge issue when it really should be, just because that is the right thing to do, not because it is politically advantageous. Kat asks, do you believe there is such a thing as globalists? And if you do, who do you think they are? Of course there are globalists. They self-identify themselves as globalists, and they are a nightmare. There are entire institutions that thrive on the concept of destroying nations and profiting off the carnage that results. See the United Nations and all of their little subsidiaries. Debbie asks, please tell us what you know about Q and QAnon. You know, despite being accused of being part of QAnon, I've actually not really even looked at it. So my answer is, I know of it. I haven't read any of the documentation for it, to my shame. I will go and have a look at it. But the answer is almost nothing. Old Sailor asks, are you on Plenty of Fish asking for a friend? No, I am not. If you want to follow me, stalk me on Twitter. Jim Cross asks, do you think someone like Wayne Swan needs to be brought into the fore? He cured the GFC single-handedly and has been around doing what some skiting lately. No. No, I don't ever want to see Wayne Swan again. RQD17 asks, are the current government legitimate or merely administrators of a bankrupt country? No, they're legit. They're a bit shit, but they're legit. The Sportsman asks, what is your best simple pasta sauce recipe? I'm gonna get so much crap for this. My favorite pasta sauce recipe is actually what my mother used to make, and when she was quite poor. And basically it's where you fry some parsley in butter, you toss that through the pasta with some pepper and shaved Parmesan cheese, and I really love it. I know it sounds mental, and it is mental, but I love it and I don't care what you think. Surat asks, if you were married, would it be toilet seat up or down in your home? If you enter my house, it's down. I don't care about a marital status. It's down or you get evicted. Old Grey Guy asks, which is best, peated or unpeated Scotch whiskey? Don't know. I haven't drunk any. Feel free to send me some. Someone asked, that's literally their username by the way, someone. I am an accidental whistleblower for the QBCC labelled me an informant. I can assure you that whistleblowers... Okay, so this is like a tweet about whistleblowing, and there is a series of photographs, so by all means go back to the original thread and scroll down and have a look. Brendan Donovan asks, what is your favourite movie and why? Fifth Element. Hands down, no question, Fifth Element is the perfect film. Not only is it hilarious, a sci-fi which always gets top marks for me, but it's just timeless. Ross Martin asks, what is your go-to cure for insomnia? The gym. Definitely, it's one of the things I miss most about being on a farm instead of the city is I can't escape to the gym like I used to. So if you're exhausted, you sleep. Andrew Chicot asks, what type of farm do you have, crops or livestock? Both, olives and cattle. Steve asks, how do Jacobs get figs into fig rolls? Mystery of the universe. Melbourne Dad asks, good luck and stay safe. Thank you very much. Same to you. Alex asks, he who does not work, neither shall he eat. Is this a socialist, communist, or capitalist principle? Actually, I think it's a biblical principle, if I remember correctly, that Lenin then, I hope I'm correct, Lenin then used as the basis for socialism toward its necessary path of communism. Now, of course, Trotsky wrote very famously that had been amended to he who does not obey does not eat, which is the natural progression of socialism and communism. Lynn Roberts asks, is it about time Oz government support, e.g. Qantas employees, their Australian citizens have paid taxes, which is given... so I've been writing non-stop. Some call it complaining, ranting, screeching, whatever. I've been writing about what the government should be doing to support all businesses that it has basically destroyed. If the government wants the economy to hibernate, if that's a thing, then they should become financially responsible for those businesses. Otherwise, when the world reopens for trade, because their bills were not put in hibernation, the businesses are not going to be there. They're just not. I love the sentiment of it'll be fine, she'll be right, everyone just be positive, but unfortunately there are real walls that businesses, banks, landlords, they're all coming up against the problem that there are no customers. And if there are no customers at the bottom tier of that system, then there's no money. And if there's no money, then no one can survive what is being done to them, because the banks can't even hand wave it all because they are tied to foreign markets, which they can't control. So there's no way to push that up the tree. The government will have to pay for it, or accept that everything will fall apart, and what they'll be left with is a permanent state of unemployment for a very long time, and an entire tier of people who were running businesses who will never trust the government again and have no capital to employ people or to take that risk. So that's my advice. Alpha asks, do you think the Chinese coronavirus is a bioweapon? Funny how there are no more protests in Hong Kong. #just saying. I think it might have been intended as a bioweapon, but I still maintain that the release was accidental. I mean, it takes a hell of a lot of risk to release a pandemic on the world. I think once it happened, China would have had so many plans in place for contingency issues exactly like this. And unlike our politicians, China has teams of people who sit there and think about worst case scenarios and what they're going to do if they transpire. We sit there and think, hopefully none of that will ever happen, and if it does, we'll think about it then. As we have learned and seen, there's no planning involved in what's going on now. But China, once it happened, they would have gone into, their machine of propaganda would have gone into overdrive, thinking, how do we make the best of the situation without the pandemic threatening our hold on power? Because as we've seen in Wuhan, once they released the people that they had welded into their own apartment buildings, which wasn't particularly popular, it starts rebellions. So I think it may have been in the process of being designed for some purpose. I don't think it got released on purpose. I think once it was, they capitalized on it because communist China. What can you do? Luke asked, if when the cash rate was 3% and the banks would loan at 6%, making 100% above their expenses, why is it that when the cash rate is so low, they won't continue to keep the ratio 0.5, could be 1% loans, etc.? I invite you all to go back if possible and rewatch the interview on Paul Murray Live with the head of the Commonwealth Bank, who was very good at explaining why the rates are as they are and the risk involved to them as a business that they have to cover as part of their rates. And it was a good point well made on that program. So I would direct you back to them. Salubrious has posted a photograph with details on the coronavirus, so go and have a look at that. It's not really a question. Jeff asked, Q and QAnon, already answered, no idea, don't know, we'll have a look. Andrew asks, is climate alarmism dead now that we have a real crisis for people to rally around? I wish. As we have learned, the climate crisis, which keeps evolving and changing its name over decades, it's never really gone. It lives in ice. Dare we say it's been put on a micro ice age. I'm sure it will reappear once people run out of other problems to solve. But yes, I think we're going to get some peace and quiet. It sucks for Greta Thunberg's career though, because that has also been put on ice. Unless she transforms herself into an economics expert, which I doubt considering how much school she's been skipping lately. Cliff asks, what criteria is the government going to use to pick winners and losers in the crisis with this taxpayer-funded bailout? Serious question. First of all, they absolutely should not be picking winners and losers, because what that is going to do is create an environment of anger and jealousy, which is the very last thing you want at the end of a crisis. So first of all, they shouldn't do it. Their bailout should be uniform across the board. We shouldn't be sitting there having arguments about who we like, who's moral, who's great, how they were beforehand. It's none of the government's business in this scenario. Unfortunately, as we've already seen the announcements coming out last week, they have started picking winners and losers. So they decided to bail out the childcare industry, despite the fact that most people are at home with their kids and those who are working are earning an income, and therefore they are still customers of their childcare centres, unlike the entirety of the retail sector, which has no customers and barely any bailout. So they are picking what I fear are topics that currently the left like. And we're almost watching them try and play politics for their future election with who they're bailing out. And I can't stress enough how much of a huge mistake that is going to be for us. So if you're listening, don't do it. Don't do it. Crosh asks, if you were anywhere in the world, all borders were suddenly put in lockdown for the next 6 months, where on earth would you like to be stranded other than your home? I think I'd have to say Neuquén, Argentina, which is a little patch of desert where I went digging for dinosaurs a long time ago, and it's a beautiful place. It's almost a place that has fallen out of time, where you have, I'll explain it later, but it is a magical place, and I think I'd like to go back there. I could have stayed there in the desert forever. Burn the Magna Carta asks, Ellie, what is your working definition of democracy? To me, it is looking like it must be the theory of limited tyranny. Okay, fair point. Every system of human civilization is about and centered around moderating power. So a tyranny is when there is no moderation to power. A democracy is where power is moderated and divided to such a point that the people in charge help to protect the minority inside a population and the rights of the individual over the mob. But the mob still has control and power over the individuals at the top of the tree of politics. So it is literally about the division of power. And yes, you are actually correct. A democracy is a limited tyranny, a very careful limited tyranny. J.E. Logan asks, have you heard there is a secret story of years around the radio? This could get me. Don't know what your question is, but sounds interesting. Maybe elaborate in the comments. Robert asks, question, if social media did not exist, would the level of anxiety, fearfulness and panic buying it around the general population be a lot less than it currently seems to be? I have seen this argument before, and my answer is not amongst the people. So I would argue that social media has a greater impact on our politicians who, let's be honest, they are media whores. They are paranoid about how they look in the press. So all social media has done to politicians is make them even more vapid. The people will panic based upon what they see around them, not in print, but the actions of each other. And when they see people dying or shelves emptying of stock, that triggers an ancient panic response, which we didn't get from social media. It is a survival technique. And so once word of a pandemic gets out, which would have happened before social media, it would have been in the papers and we saw it many times before in the past, we panic based upon survival. As far as social media on politicians, it's not affecting their panic so much as their responses. So instead of taking and putting themselves on pause and having a measured response to a crisis, they are very keen to copy each other quickly. And we've watched ourselves, for instance, copying the US, or too afraid to make choices for our own best interests unless other countries or our friend group online has made them first. And I think that is really dangerous. And that's not just to this crisis. We have been doing that in general, where we are making choices because of what's on our list instead of what we should be doing and thinking independently for ourselves. So yes, in answer to my question, not for the population, but it has had an impact on our politicians and their clarity or lack of clarity of thinking. Marie asks, I don't know you, and because I don't watch Sky, but I have a question. That's okay. I'll see what your question is, Marie. What is your opinion on Qantas asking 20,000 employees to take their annual and long service leave and go on New Start, etc., while the CEO has been given tens of millions in bonuses over the last few years? So Qantas is a special case. So let me just phrase my first answer, if this was a different company that wasn't Qantas, but everything else was the same, I would say fair enough, because these companies didn't cause this problem. This is a uniform problem that has been caused to all companies in Australia, and therefore it was the overall responsibility of our government to find a solution that does not pick winners and losers, as I said. There's no mandate to strip the capital of some companies over others, because what you're going to see at the end of it is it's like ripping limbs off a windmill. It's going to explode and catch fire and fall over. It's a very, very dangerous thing to do in an economy. Economies are complex systems. They're like a computer program. You have to feed information into the correct points. And in this case, you have to feed money into the normal revenue streams, which would be at the entry of business, instead of all over the shop, because it just doesn't work. It's going to not only grind to a halt and that money will be useless, but you're not going to salvage or keep the machine going. So that my answer in general is fair enough, the companies are doing what they have to do to survive. And it's the government's fault that they're behaving this way, instead of doing something sensible like offering everybody a 4-week entitlement of corona leave paid for by the government, which businesses could have used to allow their staff to remain employed and pay their leases. Goodness sakes, if you don't sort that out, I can tell you now, retailers going to crash and burn because they have nowhere to go. Sorry, I wandered off to the point. Qantas. Qantas can't be allowed to fail, because it is essentially, it's not nationalised, but it is our national airline, and countries require airlines. And the amount of investment and into Qantas and its hold over the market is such that it is essentially a nationalised service, whether we like it or not. And so the government knows this, and they have already been giving Qantas enormous bailouts in order to remain afloat. Now, because the government has decided to give Qantas this special treatment, of which I agree that it is a special case, they are given extra responsibility to look after their staff because of this money the government is giving them. So Qantas should be paying full entitlements at their own cost with this money from the government to all their employees. And what they've done to their engineers, standing their engineers down, is of particular concern, because as the letter that was circulating from their board pointed out, there is an awful lot of work that could be being done right now with this opportunity of all the planes grounded, which Qantas has decided not to do. So Qantas is behaving quite strangely. They have extra responsibilities on them as a business because of their position in the market and how the government is treating them. So yeah, I think it's time to have a better look at what Qantas is up to. I hope that helps. Sorry, long-winded, slightly off-topic answer to your question. Pete asks, why do journalists think they are better than others? That would be a question for a journalist. I identify as a writer. Kitty asked, what must I do to be saved? Hit Control S, that usually works. Mark Williams asks, when will you be going back on Sky News? Don't know. If you're from Sky, hit me up. No idea. Gregory asks, who are you? No one in particular. Simon asks, hashtag China virus. Okay, that's not really a question, that's more of a statement. Pete asks, why are so many journalists appear smug and arrogant? Not a lot of love for journalists, are there? Poor journalists. Careful what you ask for, Ellie Melly. That was in reply to my response for petulant questions, of which there haven't been many. Corinne. Corinne asks, this is Corinne from Sky, if you had to be stuck in a... Corinne! If you had to be stuck in a house for a 14-day quarantine with either Adam Bant, Malcolm Turnbull, or Kevin Rudd, who's your first choice, who is last, and why? What horrible choices. Oh, okay, I think my first choice would be Adam Bant. Let me quantify that one. He is young enough that I could put him to work out in the paddock picking olives. So I think my first choice would be Adam Band, if only so that I could enslave him and give him a taste of his future politics. Last choice, oh god, who's less useful, Malcolm Turnbull or Kevin Rudd? I think my last choice would have to be Kevin Rudd, because not only is he useless, he's also boring. At least Malcolm Turnbull would be very irritated by the experience, and that would amuse me greatly. So there you go. That's my answer to my question. Conservative asks, peace in the Middle East, is it possible? And if so, how? Specifically asking about Israel. Is peace in the Middle East possible? No. No, it's not. Patriot Realm asks, while I accept that the virus is bad, what is happening with drought relief and bushfire relief? I certainly haven't seen a single cent. But it has started to rain, so farmers have learnt that the only drought relief they're ever going to get is not from their hopeless governments who refuse to build dams, but from the climate itself, which, after a nasty bout, has gone and given us back all of our rain in surplus, which is why I'm watching my river out of the corner of my eye, because it is rising a little bit. Ted asks, would it be too personal to ask for your phone number and your favourite restaurant for our date? Yes, this is Twitter. Buzz. Oh, this is excellent, looking forward to it. Thanks, Buzz. Hope you're enjoying. Rick asks, are you controlled in the topic area that you're allowed to discuss on Sky? Do you have pre-planned talking points? Would you get sacked or worse if you went off script? Etc, etc. No one tells me what to say. Well, at least they could try, but it would never work. Mediso asks, how much time does Rowan spend doing his hair before going on camera? 6 hours in the morning. Chuk Chuk asks, are you ready? Let's say we could end droughts and we could end cyclones, help feed the world. Would that strike an interest? And it's what's happening now. I'm not sure that's a question. That's more like a statement. Twikey asks, is Julia Gillard part of the deep state? I don't think Julia Gillard could find the deep state if she spent her life looking for it. Dan asks, what is the best way to serve bat? Asking for a friend. I think we went with soup, didn't we? No, seriously, kids, don't eat bats. Civilization 101. Just stop it. Just don't do it. Hairy Camel 2 asks, when the stimulus is instigated, the taxpayer will bear the cost, and I wonder why the laundered taxpayer money that feeds the Paris Accord and the UN hasn't been fed back into our coffers for our own things. Things are already getting tough for many Australians, jobs, etc. No kidding. Why are we paying the UN? Why have we ever paid the UN? It's a mystery. Chris asks, why is Australia's fuel price double the price of fuel in the USA? Because we're idiots. Simon asks, who's better, Beatles or Stones? I decline to answer because that will start a war that I am not prepared to moderate in the comments. Another music question. Chris asks, because of the corona apocalypse and we're all going to die, what's the last album you would listen to and why? Now, I want to say that it'd be something like Imagine Dragons or Portishead's first album, which was amazing, or even one of the old Coldplay albums, which was also a masterpiece. I just get the feeling that if I was left to my own devices, unsupervised, it would be something stupid like that 90s shit that I love. Like I know that I'd put on Spice Girls or that great Robbie Williams concert at Nebworth. That's what I do. I know that's what I do. I don't care if you judge me. But as far as the last song that I'd ever listened to, it would be a tough contest between Grinspoon's Chemical Heart and the Red Hot Chili Peppers' Under the Bridge. I think they are the two best songs that I've ever heard. You're all going to judge me. I know you are. Go ahead. Phil asks, is a real-world crisis like coronavirus enough to put the fake climate change... Oh, we've already seen that. Yes, I hope so, but it'll only be temporary. But it will be a relief for at least 10 years. Fingers crossed. Pogmo asks, when are the crossbenchers in the lower house going to wake up to themselves, stop ignoring this pandemic, and cross the floor to vote no confidence in this pathetic government? Hopefully never, because basically Labour is waiting in the wings, and that's even worse. Chuk Chuk asks, you have a lot of unanswered questions here. Yeah, that's because I'm doing it now with the camera, this camera here. And whatever that noise is outside going on, I hope you can't hear it. I'm sorry, it's so noisy. Dave asks, if you could bitch slap anybody, who would it be? Nobody that you guys know, but I do have a list. Pete asks, why are there so many libtards in the media? B.O. Meat asks, why do you retweet your own tweets? Because I understand how Twitter works. Now, there are a couple of you who reposted them, so hold on, let me go back. Oh, here we go. Will the bank freeze mortgages for those who lose their income streams? I think they're deferring mortgages at the moment, and now there's a bit of a fight breaking out about what's going to happen to the compounding interest. But banks are definitely being forced to do something because no one has any money. But I do suspect that a lot of banks will be repossessing property in the very near future. This Wayne asks, this pandemic is the greatest hoax ever. Impeachment of Trump was bad. This is way worse. If I'm wrong, fine. When the end figures come in, they will be far lower than every year of the flu. The left and China will be patting each other on the back. Mission accomplished. Hashtag fake news. Not really a question, but interesting point. Lazar asks, Alexandra, why is it that their ABC is never held to account for the continual left-wing propaganda they broadcast? I understand the need for independence, but when taxpayers are funding it, there has to be someone who can tell them enough is enough. Absolutely, perfectly made point. Well said. Dorothy Wilson asks, thank you, Alexandra. What I'm wondering is, are the government aware of the essential commodities that are being transported out of Australia? I believe they are aware. I believe they are trying to do something about it, but way too late about it. Nuts. The last ice age was around 12,000 years ago, and glaciers cut massive gorges which have now formed into beautiful natural lakes in New Zealand. There are some nice ones down at Wilpena Pound too. These glaciers melted long ago before the Industrial Revolution, so how's that we being held 100% responsible for global temperature rise? Because our governments are 100% too stupid to realise that we're being led down a little Ponzi scheme by the UN. Basically, we're stupid. Big Bear, can we try to get a movement started to ask the PM to get banks/landlords to consider mortgage rent hiatus for 3 months? I'm worried about how many Australian families that live week to week who are being smashed with job losses who will soon start getting repossession and eviction notices. Big problem. This is why they should have put money in to the business sector so that they could pay their staff, so the staff could pay their mortgages, and pay the land leases for the retailers so they could pay the banks, and the whole system would work just fine. But no, we have a mess. So your point is great, and how they've done it, I don't know how they're ever going to dig themselves out of this colossal mess that they have made. Oh, Bear also asks, do you find yourself shunned by other women in the mainstream media because of your more conservative and rational, thank you Bear, views? Well, I don't really play with women in the media who aren't conservative. The ones on the left tend to just throw stuff at me. But they would have done that anyway because I'm not a feminist. So yeah, there's a pretty clear divide in the media between left and right. And if you're a woman who is conservative, you get the worst of both worlds, because the feminists don't just disagree with your opinions, they actively hate you and attempt to destroy you, which is always fun to watch. I invite them to try. And that is it. Thank you for joining me. I don't really... you can subscribe to my YouTube channel if you want, but it's just me making fandom videos. I'd much rather you stalk me on Twitter And if you've got a spare cent, please consider shouting me a coffee, because my whole world is retail, and that has collapsed into a complete and utter just ashes. There's nothing left of retail. So like and subscribe, follow me, stalk me, whatever you want. Have a lovely weekend, and I may do this again. Thank you very much.